Geek Therapy Radio.
Welcome back to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. So happy to have you joining me whenever you're listening, this afternoon, this evening, this morning, whenever you listen to the podcast. I know that I have a lot of international listeners, and I am extremely grateful to have you. A quick note, I updated the website, geektherapyradio.com. I made it more streamlined and easier to use. Everything is pretty much on just the homepage, and you can click over to support Geek Therapy Radio with Patreon for now. I am setting up a merch store. I've had a few people ask, where can I get, Geek Therapy Radio t-shirts or stickers or whatever? just merch. I'm figuring out how to set it up in a way. I don't want to keep forcing it down your throats. But since a few of you have asked, I am going to set one up. In case, I would love to have Geek Therapy Radio, coffee mugs, t-shirts, of course, stickers. I'm figuring all that out. But it all starts with, I cleaned up the website. I made the website more accessible, a little bit more slick, both on the desktop experience and the mobile experience. Easy access to the podcast, and like I mentioned, easy access to support. Very clean. And the contact field, I guess what you would call it, is right there on the homepage. It is pretty much the first thing you see is the contact blurb. So basically, none of this is required, but you put your name, your email, and then the comment, whatever you want to ask about. That's always how I've interacted with my audience the most, in hearing what your geek things are, what you're interested in. What comes to mind is a few months ago, I have a listener, Dave, who's out in Japan. Hey, Dave, what's going on, man? And he contacted me through the website. I wound up recording an entire, I believe it was an actual radio show with him. We made it a podcast, but also an actual radio show. And it was extremely interesting. He lives out there in Japan, and we were talking about all the thrift shops and the resale shops that he has around him in Japan, and all the cool Famicom systems and Nintendo systems that he's able to find, all these really just out there kind of devices and hardware that he's being able to come across in Japan, especially the Famicom disk system. I would love a Famicom disk system just to tinker with it. Dave restored it. He restored the belts on it. He fixed it up. He has a Famicom disk system. We were talking about that. I can go off on a whole rabbit trail about all the cool things we talked about all the cool things we talked about around his area of Japan. You can find that episode. Just type in. Usually in these podcast engines, you can search within a podcast, so you can search within Geek Therapy Radio. You definitely can do that on the website. If you go to the website and click on Listen to Podcast, there's a little magnifying glass, and you click it and you search. Just type in Japan, or just type into Google maybe. I haven't tried this, but just type into Google Geek Therapy Radio Japan or something like that, and you'll find that episode. Actually, as I am prone to do, I think I'm going to do that for you right now on my own Spreaker account. Just going to go to Geek Therapy Radio because I want to give you the exact number of the episode. So Japan. Enter. Mechanical keyboard. Okay, it's episode 153. A Kiwi in Japan. That's right, because Dave is originally from New Zealand. That's right. So if you scroll down through the past podcasts and you come to, it's just titled 153. That's how I always label my broadcasts. The broadcasts always have the number out front, so it stands for broadcast 153, and then the title of it. So look for 153, A Kiwi in Japan. It's a really fun episode. Did I release 2 versions of it? Maybe not. I have a feeling that's one of those interviews that, obviously, for the radio broadcast, the entire podcast can only be 39 minutes because the broadcast is only allowed for 39 minutes, and the other 21 minutes of the hour is basically advertisements and promos and things. One reason why I very much encourage you to grab the podcast and subscribe to the podcast, because you don't have to hear all those commercials. Yes, they put commercials here and there in a podcast at the beginning and end or wherever, but there's far less commercials. So yeah, Kiwi in Japan. That was a great episode. And the way that Dave contacted me, and several of you have contacted me, is right through the website. But now it's easier than ever. It's the first thing, because I came to a realization today. Yes, the meat and potatoes of this podcast are going to be PS5 price leaks. But you know me, I timestamp it, so you can skip ahead or wherever you want to get to that part. But it kind of dawned on me today that I was looking at the website, and to me, it looked kind of cluttered and non-intuitive, and I just thought, what's the most important thing that I have with my audience? And that is communication. So I wanted communication to be the first thing you see when you go to geektherapyradio.com. I want you to have a way to communicate with me directly. Yes, of course I tease the social media. Geek Therapy Radio on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and all that good stuff. And I interact with a lot of you on Twitter. Some of you on Twitter. Let's be real here. But email has always been the most direct. I have corresponded with the lion's share of my listeners that reach out to me just through email, geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. But I wanted the website to be representative of what's most important to me, at least, with Geek Therapy Radio, what this is all about. And that is more listener engagement. I just mentioned I've had listeners on the show before because I love exploring your hobbies and your passions and your interests, because at the end of the day, it's all about inspiring others to get into that. Not several years ago, a couple years ago, I had a guy on. He goes by, his website's Brooklyn Boy Knits, and what he does is he knits clothing. He's from the inner city of New York, and his story was that he had a dream one night that he was knitting. Don't quote me on this. It's been a couple years. You can go back to the podcast, just type in Brooklyn, I guess would be a good search term. I think he had a dream where his grandmother or something about the dream told him to start knitting. And, he's this dude that, by all appearances, does not look like somebody who knits. He said that he thought, the stereotypical person who knits is an elderly woman, and it's just not him. He was kind of, he had the hip hop style and everything, and he's not the first person you'd think of who would knit. But he said the best thing that ever happened in his life was that he pushed aside that fear, and he pushed aside whatever stereotypes and whatever worry that he would have that people would stare at him while he's on the subway. He said his commute to and from work each day was a significant amount of time, and basically he would sit there on the subway and on his commute to work, wasting his time, not doing anything productive. So he figured after he had this dream, he was going to put caution to the wind. He was going to cast his fears behind him, not worry about people who might be staring at him and what he looks like and what his appearance is. He was going to sit there and he was going to knit. And he found that he had such an incredible passion for knitting hats, for knitting scarves, for knitting other clothing, knitting gloves. Brooklyn Boy Knits. Google search it. Brooklyn Boy Knits. It's such a cool story. And that's what Geek Therapy Radio is all about, is you sharing your story with me. And that doesn't mean that every single time if you share your cool hobby or interest with me that I'm going to have you on the show, because I've asked a couple of you and you don't want to be on the show, which is completely understandable. But I would love to share what you're into with my audience either way. Whether I just say, hey, Tommy just contacted me through the website. He's really into building audio amplifiers or building speakers. I would love to tell you about that. Because again, I don't know where I'm catching you in life when you listen to a podcast of Geek Therapy Radio. Maybe somebody talking about coin collecting, maybe hearing that somebody's into coin collecting or into electrical engineering or into building components or anything, into cassette tapes, into vinyl, maybe photography, filmmaking. Maybe it'll inspire you to look into it, because maybe you'll find that you have a real passion and a real talent for it. There's so much out there in the world. I've always wanted Geek Therapy Radio to be a place where you hear about a diverse range of subjects, not only just me talking to you and building a relationship with you and you hearing me just talk about my day. Sometimes I feel like Cliff from Cheers, the mailman. If you haven't watched Cheers, Cliff is like a bumbling know-it-all. He thinks he knows it all, but he really doesn't. It's a lot of hot air. He has really good intentioned know-it-all, actually type of facts that are just almost right. But that's exactly why, despite me feeling like Cliff from Cheers sometimes, that's exactly why I reach out to you. And before I go off on any subject, I implore you, the listener, hey, if you know more about this subject than I do, because I can't possibly know everything about everything, reach out to me, because I would love to hear your input on it and be corrected on it and go back to my listeners with the correction on it. It's all about sharing knowledge. I will never act like I know everything about everything. It's an impossible feat. That's why I love reaching out to you. That's why I love hearing from you. All that to say, the website has been cleaned up, streamlined. The contact form is right there. The first thing you see when you go to geektherapyradio.com, it's name, email, and those things aren't even required, but I would prefer it. And then you can type in your comment or your question, or let me know what you're a geek about or what you're currently geeking out about. Oh man, Johnny, I never thought I would be so into building ships in a bottle. But my grandfather got me this kit, and I built one ship in a bottle, and then it just set me off on a lifetime of a passion, of a hobby. We all need hobbies. So one thing I did want to talk about before we get to PlayStation 5, and again, it's time-stamped, so it's not like I'm wasting your time here. You can always fast forward. But I hope you enjoy the conversation anyways. Speaking of hobbies and passions to dive into, it is more important now than ever to have something to distract you temporarily. It's so therapeutic to have something that you can do, maybe with your hands, something that you can create, something that you can be proud of, something that gives you fulfillment, whether it's reading. It could be reading comic books. It could be collecting comic books. It could be watching movies. Maybe you have a filmmaker's eye and you really enjoy watching movies. But it's really important right now, especially in the year 2020 with everything going on, to have something to give you a little bit of respite, a little bit of rejuvenation, a little bit of safety in your mind and in your spirit and in your body. Just turn off the social friggin' media and have something that you can go to. A good book, maybe a guitar. You haven't picked up your musical instrument in a while. Just having something. And I don't mean that as a way to avoid. We're not talking about avoiding important issues of the day. My point is, we get bombarded with all these things all day long. And at some point, we're like frogs boiling in the pot. We don't realize that we're boiling. We don't realize that we're searching through social media to get that fear fix. I have mentioned on Geek Therapy Radio once or twice, or maybe it wasn't on Geek Therapy Radio, to be blunt, I think the United States, especially right now, I can only speak for the United States because I live in the United States. We have this, it's like a fetish for fear porn. And where do you get your fix if you're addicted to fear porn? You don't go to a porn website, and I'm sure you could just type in fear, but we don't go there to get our fear fix. We go to freaking Facebook to get our fear fix. Everybody, from the worst Karen out there, to the worst Chad out there, to everybody in between, mild-mannered, whether you're passionate about things or not, whether you're a social justice warrior or not, whether you ride the fence on issues or not, I think a lot of us get caught up in the fear porn. There was a term that I came across the other day that kind of perfectly summed it up. It was in the Urban Dictionary. It's called doom scrolling. Oh, let me just hop on Facebook for a few minutes and get my doom scrolling fix. If you get on Facebook right now and you haven't, muted or specifically asked Facebook not to show you so many types of posts, or you've muted people that constantly post doomsday things, you can't get on Facebook right now, even if you've gone through other safety measures, and not just be bombarded with negativity. And again, I'm not saying that it's not important to be abreast and have your finger on the pulse of what's going on in this country right now and around the world. You should be current on what's going on, and you can definitely have your opinions and your values placed in the right place. But what good does it do to spend the entirety of your time online seeking out the doom and gloom and fear? That's why it's so important to have a hobby. That's why it's so important to once in a while shut off the Facebook or Twitter or even Instagram. I'll comment on that a little bit too, because Instagram is a little bit different. Instagram isn't so much of the fear porn like Facebook and Twitter is. Twitter and Facebook, it's a horror show. It's an absolute horror show. And the thing I'll say about Facebook and Twitter right now, before I move on to Instagram, because I think they are different animals. They're set up a different way. Twitter and Facebook. This thought came into my head earlier today that I was trying to think of an equation. The equation is that the more a post is designed to get an emotional rise out of you, the more a post is designed to shock you is directly proportional to the lack of context and citing sources. That the most outrageous posts you see of people getting the crap beat out of them, of people getting shot, of people arguing and screaming at each other, and just all the horrible, horrible sides of human nature, the more horrible they are, these posts are, the way less likely you are to see any sort of context or any sources cited. It is just designed to get you to click on it. So you're watching these people just getting the crap beat out of them on surveillance. Help cops identify this person. Well, you're not giving us any more details. Where did this come from? Where did the video come from? Where did the sighting come from? What website did this come from? You're not giving us anything. It's designed for a click. It's designed to get a click. It's designed to get people reacting with the thumbs up or the heart or the mad face or the sad face or whatever. It's designed for engagement. When everything is measured in this metric of engagement, that is all that matters when people post things like that, is engagement. It is not doing anything. The purpose of that is not to make your life better or improve anybody's life. That is the last thing down on the list. When your aunt or your uncle, who the social media stuff is new, they maybe didn't grow up with social media the way that my generation did. And I would say that my generation, social media became a thing in my generation in college. So early 2000s, it was but I'm saying we've kind of had a way to, not all of us, but we know how to handle it now, I guess, versus the biggest fear in my life is if my 72-year-old mother got a Facebook account. And I don't mean that by I'm scared of what she would post, because I know exactly what my mom would post. As soon as my mom figured out how to post things, bless her heart, and I hope she never does for her own good, it would be spiritual inspiration things. It would be prayers. It would be like the rosary. It would be all sorts of spiritual things. I don't think my mom would ever, my mom would never post terrible things or terrible things happening to other people for the sake of getting clicks. It's all going to be very spiritual things, very nice things. But I fear her ever getting a Facebook account, because I don't want her to see what goes on Facebook. I want my mom to stay pure and ignorant, for a lack of a better word, to all the horror that you are exposed to day in and day out on social media. I don't want my mom exposed to that. My dad, for a few years before he died, had a Facebook account, and it wasn't great. He didn't post a whole bunch of fear porn or anything like that, but it's just, it wasn't great that my dad had a Facebook. I'll just leave it at that. Again, I can't stress enough. My dad wasn't a racist. It was nothing like that. It was nothing about him posting chain mail or anything. But I guess I could summarize my dad's experience on Facebook with misunderstanding. Maybe not understanding the format as good as maybe he should. Let's put it that way. I don't want my mom exposed to any of that. I want to keep her pure and ignorant from all the cesspool and the hatred that purely exists on Facebook. My mom is not stupid, though. She is very, very aware of the current state of the world. She is a very, very sharp, smart, intelligent, thoughtful woman. She knows exactly what's going on. She has her say on it, and it's always my mom's perspective on things. I know my mom, but it's so, like, any compassion that I have, I definitely got from my mom. That's a trait that I got from my mom. My mom will rock your world with her opinions on things, because it will absolutely break your heart with compassion. The way she looks at situations is so pure and, for lack of a better word, holy. Like her and righteous. Her views on things would shatter the most hardened heart, because she comes out of left field with ideas and opinions that are so poignant and so relevant and so accurate, but they always come from a point of compassion and intense knowledge of the situation. I really respect people like that. It's not just my mom who I've noticed this quality in. There are other people in my life that I keep close to me. Maybe I don't talk to them every single day, but I value their opinion. Whether or not I agree with them or not, I value their opinions because they come from such a place of earth-shattering, soul-shaking compassion. The truth that they speak is so pure. And and again, I think of myself as a compassionate person. I never think to judge others, because the fact of the matter is I've not walked a mile in their shoes. But as good as I think I have a grasp on something, or as good as a worldview as I think I've, enveloped a situation in, when I hear some people like my mom speak on it, I can't help but just be broken. In a good way, be broken down to my foundation, down to my core with their wisdom. That's the word I'm looking for. The wisdom that is guided by compassion, the wisdom that is guided by faith in your fellow human being, the wisdom that's guided by just a sweet heart. And I don't mean like sweet kissing on the cheek. I just mean, when you meet people that have been through this gauntlet of life, that have enough decades under their belt, and have enough reason and have seen enough hatred and despair, have seen enough torment, who have gone through enough torment and you ask them for their opinion on something, like they're going to give you something to fuel your fire, something to fuel your hatred. Yes, I knew it was right to hate on this person. I knew it was right to hate on this group. So tell me, Granny, tell me, Mom, what do you think about this group? Give me, validate my hatred. And those people never validate your hatred. They tear it down. In one sentence, they will pull the critical Jenga piece out of this tower of hatred that you've built. They'll go right to the core of it. They'll go right to the bottom, that one piece right on the bottom. Say, oh, you think you knew everything. You think hatred worked. You think this worldview based on hate is actually working for you. I'm going to tell you something that is so imbued and saturated and glowing and sparkling and radiating with love and compassion that is going to destroy the tower you've built on sand. Love. When it comes from a place of love, it's freaking amazing. So, back to social media for a second, and we'll get on to PlayStation 5 leaks, because there really isn't much to say about it, honestly. Facebook and Twitter, you're not going to get anything good on there. And you might think to yourself, yeah, I do. There's so much... Okay, well, seriously, come on. We're just talking here. We're just having a conversation. No, you can respond immediately back to me. You can email me, of course, geektherapyradio.com, contact me. But when is the last time you ever left Facebook feeling good? When is the last time you ever, at its most basic, when is the last time you ever logged off of Facebook and felt like you did anything but waste your time? And I'm not judging and I'm not coming down, because sometimes that it was kind of like Facebook was designed to be that. It was you unwind, it's a little distraction for a little while, but it's not that anymore. I'm just saying, when is the last time that Facebook was that for you? You may think, I'm just going to go on here and unwind a little bit, and then you've been scrolling for 20, 30 minutes and you've seen horrible things and you're just pissed and you're filled with fear. That's the most thing. You're filled with fear and dread. You never get anything good from Facebook, do you? Most of the time, you don't. I would wager 9 out of 10 times you ever get on Facebook, you never log off feeling better than you did than when you logged on. And that's my point. And it's the same thing with Twitter. You never scroll through Twitter and swipe the app away, close the app, feeling better than you did before you got onto Twitter. You never, ever feel better when you log off of Twitter or Facebook. You always feel worse. Or most of the time you feel worse. Let's be agnostic about this. Most of the time you feel worse. But anger doesn't feel like feeling worse, does it? Anger is an endorphin release. That's the truest phrase in the world. That's the truest idea in the world. Anger is an endorphin release. You feel good when you're angry. You feel really good sometimes when you're angry. That rage, and there's a reason for that. It was, evolutionarily speaking, when you're fighting for survival and your survival is determined by your group or your tribe protecting its land, and you develop this evolutionary hatred for another tribe because they're going to hunt your same buffalo or they're going to come for your same resources. You need that endorphin rush before you go into battle. You need that endorphin rush of hatred before you protect your family or your baby. Now there's no place for it. We've evolved this anger and there's no place for it, really. We're struggling now as a humanity to place that hatred and that anger. Well, hatred just needs to go away, period. But we're struggling with how to focus that anger, that energy of anger, where to put it into. A lot of us have figured it out. We work out. I don't work out that much, but a lot of us get that anger and frustration out, working out, punching a speed bag or punching a punching bag or doing something constructive, playing football, playing sports, hitting something, playing racquetball, doing something to get that angry energy out in a constructive way. But social media, Facebook, Twitter, The people that run those websites know that the fear leads to anger. Yoda knew that. Anger leads to fear, fear leads to anger, whatever it was, leads to hatred. It's all designed, and it's an endorphin rush. It makes you feel good to be angry. So by the time you get off Facebook and Twitter, you're angry. I'm not telling you to stop using Facebook or Twitter. Just keep that in the back of your head. Next time you're getting riled up and you're looking at a post that has zero context and zero sources cited by somebody who is a known agitator in your friends list, just keep it rattling around the back of your head what all of that is designed to do. That it's not designed to leave you more informed. It's designed to leave you more angry. Period. Being informed doesn't feel good. And in the society in the world of everything is based on what makes you feel good. This cheeseburger that's going to give you a heart attack. You're not thinking about that while you're eating it. Oh, this tastes good. Oh, the commercial makes it look so good. Hey, all these antidepressant commercials. You're broken if you're sad. You need to be happy. There's something wrong with you if you're sad. And I know there's a difference between just being sad and depressed. But I've talked about this at length in other podcasts. You're not broken if you're sad. It's okay to be sad. But social media is designed to get you angry, and it gets you this endorphin rush, and it's not designed to leave you a better person after you log off. That's how I'll wrap that up with Facebook and Twitter. It's not designed to leave you feeling like a better person when you logged off. The biggest culprit for this sin, I'll just call it, is Instagram. As far as leaving you not feeling like a better person when you log off, Instagram is the main culprit with making people feel that way. And again, I can't put this caveat in here enough. I'm not telling you to delete your Instagram account or delete your Facebook or delete your Twitter. I'm just saying be logical about it next time you're on there. Just be thinking about it. Next time it's getting your goat, either making you angry, making you hateful, making you fearful, or on Instagram making you feel insecure and not valuable and unworthy, that you don't stack up to what you're seeing on Instagram. When you start feeling like that about any of this social media, just remember, oh, this is what it's designed to do. That's all. That's all. Just keep it back there and know what you're looking at and know what it's designed to do. So on Instagram, what it's designed to do is make you feel inadequate. And I'm not saying that is just by design of Instagram. I don't think it's anything evil that Instagram has baked into their software. Actually, they do enable it a little bit with the filters. And the phones enable it with the skin smoothing and everything. When you get on Instagram, usually people on Instagram don't share the mediocrity of their life or the bad days that they're having. I mean, if they do share bad days that they're having, they've put makeup on and they've cropped the photo just right. They've angled it just right and they've set the scene just right. Look how sad I am. But even that is made to look glamorous. I'm doing sad better than you. It's kind of weird. But Instagram tends to make you're judging yourself by others' fake lives. They're only sharing the most interesting parts and they're making it look more interesting. It's a kind of a sad experiment that I do in my head. When I see somebody post something on Instagram that is way too, you can just tell it's fake. Like, this is fake. I know this person. This is a complete opportunity for them to do something. They're being an opportunist with this situation. Maybe they are having a good day. Maybe they are at the beach or in the mountains or traveling somewhere, and they have cultivated this photo that they are sharing to such a degree that it's like, Berlin doesn't look like that. I've been to Dusseldorf. I know Dusseldorf doesn't really look like that. I've been to Brussels. you are very creative in the way that you have presented your time in Brussels here. And I love Brussels. I've been to Dusseldorf once or twice. I love Europe. I love being there. It is wonderful. But I've always felt like I've wanted to keep that wonderful experience to myself more. I mean, I'll post some things on Instagram when I'm traveling around, but by and large, I'm not documenting the entire day or my entire trip on Instagram. I feel like I want to lock things in. I want it to be special for me and who I'm with. When we were on our honeymoon to Portugal, me and my wife didn't share. It was like a rule. It was, okay, we're not sharing a whole bunch of stuff on social media about our anniversary or about our honeymoon. It's not for anybody. It's not even for our parents. It's not even for our friends. Our honeymoon is for us. Any memories we make here, we'll save our own pictures of whatever we take a picture of, but we're not putting the whole... Our honeymoon is for us. It's not for them. Simply put. Anyways, when people put only the best of their lives and they doctor it up with filters and things, does it make you feel better about yourself? That's not why they're posting it. They're not posting it to make you feel better about themselves. They're posting it to make you feel jealous that you don't look like this. Maybe that's even a bad way to put it. Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio, where we deep dive into things like this sometimes. There's a little bit of therapy here. I don't think the person... All right, let's set something up stereotypical. A beautiful blonde woman, stacked to the rafters, if you get my drift, has an Instagram account, and they have, I don't know, 1 million followers, something like that. I have not narrowed down anybody on Instagram with that description at all. I probably described 1 million Instagrammers with that description. But just, okay, stereotypical. When people think of Instagram, that's what they think of. They think of a beautiful lady posing half naked in some exotic location. Look how great my life is. I'm not even saying that person is posting things on purpose to make you looking at it feel bad. The person might be posting it literally just to have fun. They might be naive. And I'm not saying everybody's like this. I'm not being that naive. But they might be naive to the fact that this is really causing more pain than good. Because picture the person who's looking at this now. Picture it's a 12-year-old girl who is just beginning to figure out what her place in the world is, in this world in 2020, as a woman. And she's seeing that, and maybe she's awkward looking, or maybe she's a little bit overweight, on top of everything that she's supposed to be figuring out for herself at this time in her life, is seeing a Barbie doll on Instagram with how fascinating her life is and how good she looks, doctored and filtered. Is that helping that 12-year-old girl at all? Is that helping anybody? I always picture the sadness kind of in my, like a sad scenario I picture in my mind is when that beautiful blonde bombshell snaps that picture and she gets the angle just right. Click. I picture the 30 seconds right after she takes that picture. And it's such a depressing mental image. So you see the picture on Instagram and it's filtered and it's highlighted and everything's colorful and it's putting on her best face. Then I picture the 30 seconds afterward where she's really in this kind of gray space. She's really depressed. She lets her gut go a little bit and she's got a normal human body and she really doesn't like herself. What I'm getting at is that even those people are pretending. And it's this kind of sick, like, cycle that we go through and that Instagram kind of presents that this person is perfect. Well, picture the 30 seconds after they took that picture. Picture what's going on in their head, how critical they're being of themselves, of their own body, of their own image, of the place they're in. Maybe they're partner had just beat the crap out of them a minute before. I'm sorry I'm being so dark here, but there are real people going through real struggles. Maybe they snap that picture, and then right after they snap that picture, they have to go feed their special needs sibling. Their life isn't that great. And they never share anything about their special needs sibling because they don't want anybody to ever see that their life has struggle in it and strife. I did not know I was going to go on such a tangent. So when you're on social media, just keep that in the back of your mind. And I will wrap up this idea, this rabbit trail that I've gone down before we talk about PS5 pricing. It's a podcast. I can do whatever I want on here. Because I timestamp. That's my scapegoat. I timestamp. To summarize everything of what I just said, all those pitfalls, all those realizations and things to think about. And again, it's just something to keep in your back of your mind. Maybe you come to a completely different conclusion than I've outlaid here. Maybe you disagree with what I just said the last 39 minutes or whatever, 40 minutes, completely. You think it's just way off. That's fine. That's your opinion. The point is, all I'm getting at is that you think about it next time you're on social media. Just think about it. Even if you disagree with what I said, that you're just conscious of what you're doing when you're on social media, that you think about it, internalize it. What am I doing here? Because on Geek Therapy Radio, this is the summary of that last sentiment. I often get, why this sticks in my brain, I don't know, but it's such a poignant idea. I've had a couple people on social media tell me that they have no time for any hobbies or to geek out about anything. They just have no time for it. They have kids. They have jobs that they work for 12, 16, 18 hours a day, sometimes more, longer, 36-hour shifts, which is insane. They just have no time in their life for a hobby or for any sort of decompression by geeking out over anything. And that always strikes me because they always say it on social media. You're on social media. Obviously, you have time. I guarantee you, if you go through your phone usage history and see how much screen time you have on Facebook in a week, it'll add up. I'm not saying it's going to be a ton, but I'm going to say it's going to add up to an amount of time that may surprise you. An amount of time that you could get 2 or 3 chapters further in an old book, reading some Hemingway or some poetry by Thoreau, whatever, something you used to be into. Maybe you like to build with clay, or how many strokes of a painting could you make in that amount of time? Even if you only have 5 minutes a day to scroll through Facebook, which I don't think is realistic. I think people, if they have Facebook, they're going to spend more than 5 minutes a day on it. Most people who are on Facebook regularly enough to tell me that they don't have time to pursue any geek interest. Add up that Facebook time, add up the social media time. And if you see by the end of the week on your phone usage, there's an hour of accumulated time that I've spent on Facebook. And all those pitfalls I mentioned earlier. When you got off the Facebook, all you were filled with was either fear or anger. It was not therapeutic at all. So if you built up an hour, let's say, of total social media time at the end of each week, how much better would that hour have been utilized doing something for you? For your mind, and for your heart, and for your soul, even just a couple minutes a day. And it doesn't have to be this big, grandiose gesture. You don't have to design the most perfect, efficient circuit that's going to revolutionize household lighting as we know it. You don't have to do that in 5 minutes. But my goodness, even if it's 5 minutes of just quiet, of turning everything off and just sitting, maybe it's meditating, just being quiet. Maybe it's 5 minutes of just strumming on a guitar. That's all I'm getting at here. 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, instead of spending 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there scrolling through Twitter and becoming fearful and angry, you spend five minutes scrolling down 6 strings of your guitar and just running through a chord progression. G, D, C, G, D, C, G. Those aren't the actual tones, but you know what I'm saying. Do you see what I'm saying here? It's hard to encapsulate completely, but as long as you think about it, as long as you go away from this conversation just thinking about it, again, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, whether you think I'm right on the money or I'm way off base, if you leave this podcast and you go to Facebook after this podcast, or you're on Facebook while you're listening to this podcast, at least you're thinking about it. What am I doing here on this? Is this good for me? Was this ever designed to be good for me? Who is this good for? Clicks and algorithms. It's not designed to be good for you. You can make it good for you. At one point, Facebook was cool because it was just catching up with your friends and family and seeing how they're doing. Now it's totally not that. Just something to think about. Okay, where are we at here? 45 minutes, about maybe 46. I don't know where they're going to put the friggin' ad or how long the ad's going to be at the beginning of this podcast. But let's talk about PS5 pricing. It's going to be weird for those of you who just clicked right to this timestamp. You're like, what the hell was he talking about for 45 minutes? That he couldn't just get to the PS5 price leaks. Okay, I'm going to leave the link to this article that I'm gleaning this information from in the podcast description. It comes from Tom's Guide. So, a concept designer on Twitter, his name is Ben Geskin, B-E-N, then last name Geskin, G-E-S-K-I-N, found images on Amazon France. Amazon France had accidentally, very briefly, posted the PlayStation 5 with the price next to it, add to cart or whatever it is, but purchasing options from this price. And the price on Amazon France was 499 euros for the standard PS5 and 399 euros for the digital edition. Roughly, converting the euro to the US dollar, that would be, for the standard version, 499 euros would be about $565 or 447 pounds. And for the digital edition, which is 399 euros, that converts to 452 US dollars and 358 British pounds. So obviously those prices, Amazon France immediately removed them. But typically when this has happened in the past, it's pretty indicative of what the price is actually going to be. Now the question here is, first of all, these prices, 499 euros for the standard version and 399 euros for the digital edition, is right in line with what most of us have been speculating. I personally have been speculating, you can go back to the tapes of Geek Therapy Radio, that the PlayStation 5 was going to be priced between $400 and $500. That's the sweet spot. With a rare, like in a bell curve, if you're looking at a bell curve, and $400, $500 is right at the top of that bell. The extreme right of that curve to the extreme limit, I would say $600. Absolute maximum. It's a rare outlier. But if I was going to bet, I would put all of my money on that it's going to be between $399 and $499 US dollars. Now, we saw that this leak says 399 euro to 499 euro. You would not be criticized for thinking that they would adjust the price for dollars. So that 499 euros equals about $565. If they do keep it above $500, I would wager it's $550. It's not going to be. It's definitely not going to be $565. My bet is that the price is going to be the same everywhere. That it's going to be, well, usually the United States typically gets the better prices. I know if you're listening in India or anywhere else in the world, prices are insane. South America, Anderson, I know that computer prices and game console prices are insane in other parts of the world. But that 499 euros, I would bet, because the United States typically gets better prices on things, I mean, that it would be 499 US dollars. 499 euro, 499 US dollars. Maybe, possibly, 549 US dollars. But again, I lean towards, when it's all said and done, when this all shakes out, even though this leak on Amazon France was 499 euros, I think, like we discussed on the broadcast of Geek Therapy Radio, that given the current global climate, given that we're going into recession, given that so many people are out of jobs, and given that Sony is going to be struggling to move as many of these units as possible in these difficult times where people are less likely to splurge that amount of money, I would bet that they stick with the same price in the United States of 499 US dollars. Could they come out at $550? Maybe, but I'm still banking on that it's going to be $499 for the standard version and $399 for the digital version. Given the current climate, again, I can't stress that enough. Think about Sony thinking about the consumer. They know that everybody in the world is hurting more than usual right now financially. And it probably wouldn't be the wisest move. If they had a choice between $500 and $550, I think they're going $500. I think they're going to try to move as many consoles as possible because they're going to try to make as many software sales as possible. That has always been where the profit margin is the software sales. So if they price it at $550 and they only sell 500,000 units versus selling it at $500 and selling 1 million units, these are speculative numbers, just for example, I think they're going to take the $50 hit on the console to sell twice as many consoles, or sell a significant amount more consoles, because after you have significantly amount more consoles out there, you have significantly more people purchasing software titles. So Geek Therapy Radio, you're hearing it right here, right now. My official GTR guess is that this leaked price of 499 euros for the standard and 399 euros for the digital edition, I think we're going to see the exact same 499 US dollars and 399 US dollars. That is my official prediction. But something that we know right now, with fairly good authority here, is that the pricing is right in that chunky meat of the bone that we speculated, between 400 and 500 US dollars. We know that. We've seen here with the leak that it's definitely going to be in that price range. I'm calling it. I'm calling it right now. We don't know. On that note, we don't have any sort of date yet. There is no official date for the official pricing release. I'm skimming through more of this article. It's going over the hardware and the 3D audio hardware, and I'll read this last little blurb of this. Quote, both the PS5 and Xbox Series X are seeing lots of announcements this summer in the place of what would have been E3 2020. Sony just put on a massive PS5 games event where we saw titles such as Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and Horizon Zero West, and Microsoft is set to answer back next month with a July exclusives showcase. While there are some details still to arrive, such as official pricing, additional technical details, and some of the launch lineup reveal, both consoles are set to arrive in time for the holiday season. I'll read that last part again. While there are some details still to arrive, such as official pricing, both consoles are set to arrive in time for the holiday season. So we're going to hear very soon, very shortly, and of course I'm going to tell you on Geek Therapy Radio, though by the time I think you get to Geek Therapy Radio, you've probably already seen it. But you'll at least hear my opinion on it. Whatever information you can glean from that. But we're going to hear very soon the official pricing. Across the board, Xbox Series X, PlayStation 5, all of them are going to be between $350 to $500. That's for PS5 and for Xbox Series X. That's gonna be the margin in there. $350 to $500 tops. With a small outlying chance that PS5 might be, for the standard version, might be $550, but I don't think that they're gonna do that. Can I play devil's advocate just for a moment here about pricing? Because I know some of you might be thinking it. And if you aren't thinking it, I mean, just shed some light. $600. So the PlayStation 3 launched for $600 back in when was it? 2006? Mid 2000s. It was $600. That was one of the big deals about the PlayStation 3 is that it was an expensive console when it launched. $600. It was like 3DO expensive in the 90s. Even though $600 in 1993 was way more than $600 by the mid 2000s. But that's my point here. If Sony, and follow me, if Sony released a PlayStation 5 in 2020 for $600, when you factor in inflation, $600 isn't as much as it was in the early 2000s when the PlayStation 3 came out. Due to inflation, $600 is not worth as much as $600 in the mid 2000s. That's why I retain that slight outlier price estimate that there's a very slim chance it will be $600 in the United States. I would be surprised and not surprised. The reason why I still think it's not going to be $600, even though $600 is not as much money today as it was even back when the PlayStation 4 launched. PlayStation 4 was not $600. The reason why I think they're going to stray away from that is because people are going to be thinking that's closer to $1,000 than it is to $100. It's just a worse price to see on a sticker. And if the name of the game is profit margin off of software sales in a recession, they're going to stick to the $500 price point. $499 specifically because it just looks better. It looks easier to swallow than $599. Just my guess, but I wanted to point that out, that inflation thing, because I know some of you were thinking that, and I've seen that argument elsewhere. Well, if they could release it for $600, because $600 is not as much money in 2020 as it was back in the early 2000s when PlayStation 3 came out, mid 2000s. True. That is very true. But what do you think? What do you think the pricing for the PlayStation 5? I asked the question in the broadcast, mostly specifically to PC gamers. If you're a PC gamer, are you excited about the PlayStation 5? Do you actually want the PlayStation 5? I said that I want the PlayStation 5 enough to put it on a Christmas list, but I don't want to spend my own money on a PlayStation 5. I'm not that excited. But there are other PC gamers out there. I saw Snazzy Labs on Twitter, avid PC gamer, saying, why am I so drawn to the PS5? Why do I want a PlayStation 5 so much? There are those among us, PC gamers, who are intrigued by the PlayStation 5. I don't want to spend my own money on it. Maybe I'll ask my wife for it. Doesn't make any sense because it's all the same money. Anyways, I think that's going to do it. This is kind of a longer podcast. My wife went to bed and I told her, yeah, I'm just going to go record a quick podcast. I just need to get one out there. And it was really good, really therapeutic. I'm looking behind me right now. And I think a ghost has been in here because there's pictures that are laying all over the floor. There's a mural of me, not a mural, but a framed picture of me that has fallen onto the futon. And now that I'm looking at it, I had it on a foam piece of Oralex, some audio or some sound absorbing material that has fallen off the wall. And that was propping up the pictures and they all fell down. Nothing's broken, but whatever. I need to find a better solution. You get the man cave going out in the backyard. That's going to be fun when I get that up and going. When we do taxes and we see what's going on with money and I can finally build a shed out in the backyard and convert it to a man cave, recording studio, podcast studio, just working thing, solar powered, off grid, 1,000 kilowatts, not 1,000, sorry, 1 kilowatt of off grid solar production, at least 1 kilowatt. That's going to be such a fun project to tell you guys about. Oh my gosh. Oh, I can't wait to tell you all about that. There's all sorts of other things I can go into right now, but listening to the bump music, that means that the podcast is ending. Fancy audio footwork. Thank you so much for listening to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. You are worthy of love, both giving and receiving love, and you are worthy of your own self-confidence, no matter what you see on Instagram. But you should follow Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram, because I'm just going to show you cool geek stuff. That's all I care about on Instagram. I'm going to show you some cool geekiness. Anyways, thank you from the bottom of my heart, for listening. If you want to help me buy diapers, shameless plug here. Shameless. I'm going to dangle my baby in front of you. If you want to help me buy diapers, my wife is pregnant. I'll link to the Patreon in the podcast description. I'll let you know as soon as I have a merch store going on. Just thank you for even thinking about it. Thank you for even listening to the words of me pitching it to you. Thank you so much for listening to Geek Therapy Radio. I can't wait to talk to you next time. Take care and be safe.
Take me home, country roads. My home far away. Driving down the road, I get a feeling that I should have been home yesterday. Country road.